All right, fellas, whenever you're ready to go, it's all yours.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome in once again to yet another edition of Open Run, presented to you by none other than War Media. My name is Gabriel Wilkins, and I'm joined once again with my partner in crime, my fellow co-host, Josh Hicks. Man, how you been doing?
It's always good to hop on the mic with you, brother. All is well. Hope the same for you.
Oh, indeed. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to get into some, of course, NBA action, as well as some action on the campus with college basketball season officially underway. No top 25 matchups last week to kick off the opening week of the season, but we got a hell of a lot to talk about with a couple of top 25 matchups set to take place over the next several days or so. But before we get into all of that, Josh, I got to ask you, man, what has stood out to you across the basketball landscape that's impressed you the most over the last week or so? Because there's been a lot of big-time basketball games going down, especially in the NBA. A lot of big-time performances, back-to-back 50-point games, courtesy of Darius Garland and Joel Embiid on the same night, to be exact. It's a lot you can talk about, but what stood out to you the most?
Joel Embiid stood out to me the most. And the reason why, it's not just because of his, 59-point performance. The dude had 8 assists with 7 blocks and 11 rebounds.
Yeah.
Like, you almost like that. If that isn't dominance in every aspect and category of the game, I don't know what to tell you. So the fact that Joel Embiid performed not just on the offensive end, but the defensive end as well at that elite type of play, knowing that you don't have James Harden on the floor with you, that's key. That's key for the Sixers to have from a consistency perspective moving forward until James Harden comes back. I'm not saying he has to drop 50 every night, but the Sixers need that type of aggressive play on both ends of the floor for them to maintain and get over the hump until James Harden comes back. And that performance itself really stood out to me, coming from Joel Embiid, which we know he's a great talent, but he reminded us of who he really is when he's really locked in on all ends of the floor.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Joel Embiid. He was definitely a guy that impressed me, but another guy that caught my eye over the last week or so was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, man.
Yes, sir.
Oklahoma City is a team that's similar to Utah, even though they haven't gotten out to as hot of a start as Utah. People thought that they were just going to be a team that just tanked and guys could just coast through, in and out, every night and whoop them by like 20 plus or so. But apparently Shai hasn't gotten that memo. This guy is getting to the bucket at will. It doesn't matter who's defending him. You got to throw a couple guys onto him. And then when you plan to drive, he has that step back jump shot that he could just nail right in your face. And he was doing that at a high volume against the Knicks in Madison Square Garden. I think he put up 31 and 7. I'm not so sure about the numbers, but he definitely had a 30-plus point game and had over 5 assists on an evening. And it didn't matter who they put in front of him. R.J. Barrett, Derrick Rose, Julius Randle. He had it going. Step back, turn around, jump shots, getting to the rim, drawing fouls, getting to the free throw line. And him and Josh Giddey are playing some excellent basketball right now, and they making life hell on teams. They almost beat the Milwaukee Bucks last week. I believe it was on Wednesday night when those two teams squared off last week. That was one hell of a performance by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. In my opinion, he's looking like an all-star right now. I don't know how you go against him. That Western Conference is going to be tough to pick out guards because there's about several of them. And somebody come February is going to get shafted and they're going to feel like they got slighted. And they're going to be able to take it personally, but you really can't because there's so many guys to choose from. And of course, as you brought up, 21. Can you do something for me? Can you put a little Rick flex for me? 101 points in 2 games? And you follow up a 42-point night against the Hawks with a 59, 11, 8, and 7 line against the Utah Jazz, who have been one of the hottest teams in the league to start the season. He's slowly elevating back up that MVP race. And this is a guy who's been a runner-up for MVP the last 2 years. I haven't seen the highlights of that game yet, and I haven't purposely because I know I'm going to go back and take the time to watch that game on League Pass before this week, concludes. But man, and put up 25 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And they needed every bucket because it was a close game from what I heard. And I had the privilege of being at the Nuggets and Bulls game last night. So when that happened, I had just walked out the arena and I'm like, yo, what's going on? 59 points.
I'm going to kill you, bro. I'm going to kill you because you know I was at that game last night. I was at that game
you
last night.
But you was doing your thing with the media, man. So I understand. I was up at the 300 level. If I was in the 100 level, I damn sure would have talked with you.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm gonna get you. If we're in the building at the same time, we gotta make something happen. We gotta make something happen.
but I know you was on that 100 level. You know what I'm saying? You had to come up to me because you know how the United Center is. But I did get a ticket last minute, and I saw that game as well.
Yeah, for sure. But just picking back off of everything you're saying, man. Yeah, that's especially Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You can see that growth where he took that next level, of being not just an all-star but a leader from a player capability perspective. That Chris Paul effect is mad real, brother. He learned a lot from Chris Paul at CP3, and now you can see how in his offensive style of play, the aggressiveness from the offensive end, the expansion of the game. He's also figured out how to play his game and not be rushed. He's always patient in everything that he does, and he still gets to his sweet spots. He knows exactly where to go, and he knows how to finish on the offensive end, but shooting the ball as well as getting to the lane, and honestly improving on a playmaking perspective as well, because of the fact that he has young talent around him. That is showing up in a lot of cases. Lou Dort has been shooting the three pretty good, pretty decent this year. I forgot the rookie's name. Jalen, I forgot his name. He came from
Jalen Williams. Yeah,
Jalen Williams. He's came out on the court stroking. So it's like this team, even though they are young, like you said, but they're like the Utah Jazz. They're young, but they're shocking the league in a lot of ways. And SGA has a lot to do playing that Call of Duty Modern Warfare style, sniping these dudes on the offensive end, sniping and manipulating the defense so well that there's no answer for him. And it's very interesting because for guys like that in the league, the Kyle Andersons even at times, even though you're so slow, it looks so slow motion, like he's gliding across the court. He still gets to where he got to do where he's most efficient and he gets the job done. So it's impressive to see that growth and him taking that next level to become, like you said, the all-star caliber player that he's playing like right now. And yeah, like you said, that Western Conference, man, it's gonna get real scary when you're trying to pick up what the all-star reserves are gonna be looking like. I don't know if he's gonna start, but them reserve options is gonna be very, very tough. And he might be stealing somebody's spot this year.
I'll say this: I don't know if he starts or not, but when you putting up 31.1 points, as I have the numbers up in front of me now, 5.7 assists and 4.4 rebounds, you're shooting over 50% from the field. You're shooting 36% from three-point land. Somebody's spot in jeopardy, especially if this team plays above expectations and does not seek the tank like so many of us thought they would. And just like I was saying earlier with the Utah Jazz and a couple of episodes prior to this, how there are certain organizations that don't know how to tank well, even when they try to tank well. The Oklahoma City Thunder are one of those franchises. If you think about it, I mean, they tried to do it with Chris Paul. It didn't work. Now they want to do it with Shai, and he's like, no. And then recently his name was in trade rumors and stuff like that. I don't think Sam Presti's going to be seeking to trade him at any time soon. That dude is a building block and a cornerstone, and I don't know how you move on from that. He already made a mistake getting rid of one MVP guard, and we all know who that guy ended up becoming, and that's James Harden. Mm-hmm. I don't think you want to do that again.
Yeah, most definitely, man. It's been an impressive week of basketball, and the crazy part is we just getting started, not even a fourth into the season. So I'm just excited to see where these next games are going to be looking forward to, man. Because I love it.
Oh, indeed. But I want to get into the Chicago Bulls, the hometown Chicago Bulls.
Then we got to talk about that debacle.
No, we got to, man. They started off last week strong with a win to close out a back-to-back set against the Toronto Raptors. However, ended up losing a tough, close game that they sought to come back in and pull out a victory against the New Orleans Pelicans, but fell short. Had a few days off. Thought, maybe that would help them get some practices under their belt and find some chemistry and find out what the defensive issues are and rebounding and so forth, get guys fresh. But that wasn't the case. Went up against the Denver Nuggets to close out the weekend. Ended up getting annihilated by 23 points. I believe the final score was 126-103. And Michael Porter Jr. came up in here, man, lit him up with a 30 ball, had 31 points, game high on the night. Wasn't even looking to pass the ball, but he didn't have to because he was on fire, man. What were your takeaways and thoughts from that game, Josh? I know you was on hand. How's everything going with that franchise right now? And most importantly, the players in the locker room after a tough week, as the Bulls are now 6-8 through the first 14 games on the year.
They knew it was unacceptable. They knew that, that effort that they gave, especially to start off the game, that's not what they are. That's not what they do. And that's not what they're going to accept moving forward. And I think the best thing about that scenario is, outside of Billy Donovan bringing it up in his press conference, Zach LaVine made it known, and he put it on notice. He said it's unacceptable, and he said there's no reason why we should do that, especially you're coming off a 3-day layaway. You had 3 days off, 3 days between your next game, and you had 2 practices, and Denver was coming off a 7-game road trip.
Yeah.
So this is their last road game just before they even supposed to go home. And they didn't just come in here and just try to win the game. They annihilated the Bulls in every aspect. Michael Porter Jr. had 6 threes. The Bulls themselves total 6 threes. Like Michael Porter Jr. equated what the Bulls were giving as a team. And let's not forget to mention as well, Zach LaVine was the only one that had over 20 points.
Yeah.
He's the only one that had over 20. DeMar DeRozan didn't have 20 points. Vooch didn't have 20 points. Half of your bench almost didn't have double figures. So where's your production? So it's the game that if I was Billy Donovan, you just throw this one out. Let's just throw it in, throw it out, use the bathroom, do the toilet paper real quick, throw it out, because it was so bad to watch how lack of effort. It was a lack of, apathy. And it was like at the same time, there was no effort being drawn on either end of the floor. And, at the end of the day, they know better. The Bulls know they got to be better. And they're in positive spirits about that. But at the same time, that ain't no excuse for you to get whacked the way that you did, knowing that this team is coming off that road trip and you had a break, a nice long break, to prepare for a matchup for them, and it was a prime opportunity for you to smack them in the face. That's the difference between where the Bulls really are at right now, from the makeup and chemistry of this team, to what made Denver so good and why they're the top Western Conference team. You can see you saw the difference right there.
I believe you, because Denver is now 9-4 through their first 13 games as of this recording. And the thing that impressed me the most with Denver when they faced off against the Bulls was how Nikola Jokic wasn't even looking to score. And he didn't have to. He did a hell of a job getting guys active and involved in seeking to direct and guide the offense like a conductor, and getting guys on backdoor cuts, getting guys coming off of pin downs and screens, leading to 3-point shots. But the thing that I wasn't pleased with seeing from the Bulls end was a lack of energy to start out games. Like, this has become a theme that needs to stop immediately. They've gotten off the slow starts rather, far too often. And we saw that in the first quarter. And something has to get cleaned up with the defensive rotations, because they are a step too slow. Mm-hmm. And I don't understand personally how you lose Michael Porter coming off of screens and cuts when he's a shooter, and giving him an open 3-point shot, that's like a layup, especially with the way he's shooting the basketball right now. Michael Porter has to be at least among the league leaders in 3-point field goal percentage. And he's a guy that's ultra efficient. He doesn't need many shots to have a 30-piece. And you saw that last night. And then once they did close out, they were far too over-aggressive on closeouts, which led to Michael Porter Jr. saying, okay, you're going to be that aggressive on me? I'll just slide right on by you, drive inside the lane. You don't have a helper man there. Easy layup. On top of that, with the offense, I'm noticing still too many times where DeMar is being relied upon to carry the offense. And he had a tough challenge against Denver with Aaron Gordon on him. And Aaron Gordon made life hell on him. Those turnaround fadeaways were being contested. And he had a size and length that made it troublesome for DeMar to, at least create space. And he couldn't back him down the way he would a smaller guard with Aaron Gordon. So I thought they came in and just set the tone defensively. But offensively, it was easy work for them because the Bulls weren't on the same page. And what I saw when I was at the game against Denver is a continuation of what I saw when I went to the regular season home finale last year against the Charlotte Hornets. Too many defensive breakdowns. This was a team that had a top 10 defense through the first half of last season. I have yet to see that defense since the All-Star break. I've yet to see it. And I understand that Lonzo Ball is a key piece of this rotation. I understand that Kobe White, who's also hurt, is a key piece to the second unit. And those are guys that are missing. But you have to have a next man up mentality. And you have to have an attitude where if you're on the Bulls roster or bench, saying, hey, if those guys aren't here, I got to step up and do my job. If it's not scoring, I need to rebound. If it's not rebound, I need to lock up and play solid defense. Also got to hit shots when I have wide open looks as well. And I can't be passive, such as Nikola Vucevic was a few times last night when he had a couple shots at the top of the key within the mid-range area, but he's turning them down. You have to take those shots. When you see that DeMar is struggling and Zach is not his best, you have to be at your best and step up and be that third option that everyone knows that you can be. And you were also an all-star in Orlando. So even though you may not be the number one dog anymore, you got to know how to play in that role and pick and choose your spots and when and where to be aggressive. And they needed him last night. He just was nowhere to really be found.
Yeah, man, you touched on a lot of those good points. Obviously, when you talk about the energy to start off games slowly, Billy Donovan said in this press conference, at the end of the day, energy is a choice. You have to choose to have a lot of energy and to play at a high level, play at a high effort type of level. And that equates to, okay, if someone's not doing good, then guess what? You do have to have that next man up mentality. And he knows that that's something that they have to get better at. So to that extent, I would not be surprised as Billy Donovan, which we know he is capable and has a history of doing. Don't be surprised if he shakes these lineups up. Don't be surprised if certain players aren't playing because to that point, there's a reason why he's been real quick to yank Io and Patrick Williams off the court as soon as he can when he starts to see things start to slip. And that's something that he's always been has done this past season, so far this season. So I expect some shakeups in the lineups to take place. But at the same time, it's Michael Porter Jr., brother. That dude you don't need to tell him not to shoot the ball. Every time he passes it, he ain't passing that mug up. It's going up, and it's going up some way, somehow. The crazy part about it is he's actually pretty good at what he does. So he hits those jump shots. And obviously, yes, that is a huge difference to what the Bulls had to deal with. But to your part about DeMar, that is very true that halfway through the second quarter, throughout the rest of the game, it was very much, all right, DeMar DeRozan, go to work. But DeMar deferred a lot in that first quarter. Leading into the second quarter, offensively, he didn't have his first shot attempt until the second quarter.
I know. I noticed that too.
Because dare we kill him for actually saying what we want him to do, which is to play within the flow of an offense and not play DeMar ball, hero ball? So I don't even blame DeMar DeRozan really for his performance because, to be honest with you, he did what he's supposed to do. Problem is no one else showed up. So if no one else is showing up, Okay, fine. I have no choice but to go to work, even though I wasn't expecting it. Now, when you talk about expectations, yeah, that's not DeMar's expectations. He expects to go out and kill every night, and he expects to win. But none of that took place because no one else went along for the ride with him. And that's often been a problem with DeMar Hero Ball. Because in DeMar Hero Ball, if he's hitting, yay, that's great. But there's still nobody riding along with him. So, so if there's no one riding with him, now you're in a situation where, lo and behold, like Sunday, he gets cold. He can't hit a jump shot. Bulls are screwed because your main reliable source is nowhere to be found, and you weren't prepared enough to have that next man mentality and step up in the way that you need to step up to nip those things in the bud. And that's something that the Bulls have to get over. And like you said, be better at down the stretch with these games, because at the end of the day, schedule's not getting any easier. They play the New Orleans Pelicans on Wednesday. We're recording this on a Monday. They play the Pelicans on Wednesday. And knowing that's a team and a game the last time they played, the Bulls should have won. But at the end of the day, Pelican superstars came out the mug and said, yo, we got this. And the Bulls superstars struggled. When they didn't step up when they needed to the most. You have another prime opportunity to do that at the Smoothie King Arena in New Orleans. I want to see if it's going to be the same script, or are they going to flip it, especially if they got their butts whipped by the Denver Nuggets and have a wake-up call in the way that they did.
Yeah, the Bulls face off against the Pelicans on Wednesday night, and they close out the week with only 2 games at home at the United Center against Paulo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Bol, and the Orlando Magic. That's a team that's also been pretty hot as of late. They beat Dallas last week as well as Phoenix, albeit Phoenix was without Chris Paul for that game. Devin Booker was still on the floor, and DeAndre Ayton as well, who had just recently returned from injury. They beat them by double digits rather impressively without Paulo Banchero in both of those matchups. So they've been playing some stellar basketball. But moving to your point, I think DeMar really wasn't aggressive because of foul trouble. He got in early foul trouble. And when you pick up 2 quick fouls like that, you kind of are a little bit apprehensive. And then, too, he had to figure out a way to get free from Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon's defense was superb on DeMar. He wasn't giving up too much airspace at all. And he did a good job of not fouling. But I knew once Michael Porter Jr. got hot early, it was going to be hard to contain him. And like I said, he scored 31 points on only 16 shots. He shot 11 of 16 from the field, 6 of 9 from 3-point range. That percentage right there is almost good enough to pass a test in college. So if he's shooting that well, you in for a long night. And then just looking at the numbers as a team, Denver was 13 of 27 from beyond the arc. The Bulls made only 6 of 22 of their looks, 27% from beyond the arc. It's a make or miss league. If your guys aren't going to make those threes, especially the ones that they get when they're wide open, Ayo had a couple last night on the wing and in the corner that he just couldn't hit. That's the difference between a W and an L most nights. And the turnovers were costly as well. Bulls had way too many turnovers. They finished with 18 turnovers on the night. That's a huge issue. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not mistaken, the Bulls are 24th in offensive rating as of this recording as well, entering week 5 of the season.
That's kind of telling, considering that you got Billy Donovan, who's supposed to be an offensive genius. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but moving away from the hardwood on the NBA to the campus life. College basketball season, as we said, just recently kicked off. DJ Wagner, the number 1 player in the class of 2023, guard, son of DeJuan Wagner, former NBA player and Memphis standout, has decided to take his talents to Kentucky, picking the Wildcats over Louisville, who recently had hired his grandfather, Milt Wagner, to be the director of player development over there under Kenny Payne, who just recently got the head coaching job with the Cardinals. His family had extensive ties to that program, with his grandfather having played there prior to going to the NBA and winning a championship with Magic Johnson and the Lakers in the late 80s. if Wagner is able to make it to the pros, he would be the third generation member of the Wagner family to make it to the NBA, with his father, Dewan Sr., and his grandfather, Milt, who played and had a career for several seasons in the NBA. So that was a big time story. Shout out also to Peja Stojakovic's son, who just recently committed to Stanford. He's a two guard, could really shoot the ball like his dad, but a little bit different. Got a game off the dribble, 4-star recruit. I noticed that as well. But I want to get into some of these top 25 matchups. By the time that this episode releases, the Champions Classic will have been concluded. Is you have a top 10 matchup between Kansas and Duke in that one, as well as Kentucky and Michigan State. But the two top 25 matchups on the college basketball docket this weekend, outside of a big time top 5 one, the two will be going down in Vegas. You got number 18 Virginia versus number 5 Baylor, and number 23 Illinois, the Fighting Illini, taking on the UCLA Bruins, ranked number 8 in the country, led by a Chicago native, Amari Bailey, who is a product of California, Sierra Canyon. But before, he went out there, you all know him as the guy that was at Skinner West and they're going to grammar school scene, lighting it up. They are all set to headline the main event out in Las Vegas at the T-Mobile Arena on Friday night. The winners of the following matchups will face off against each other for the championship in the 14 tournament, which will take place on Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. Central Time on ESPN. Before we get into the top 5 matchup of the week that I think everybody in college basketball will have their eyes on, is that'll feature 2 blue bloods, and we'll get into that in a moment, rather. Which players do you believe we should have our eyes on in the following matchups, starting out first with Virginia at Baylor?
Ooh, man, that's a good question. I must admit, I didn't get around too much college basketball as much as I probably should have. I was too busy.
It's not as popular as it once used to be.
Nah. It's not. And I was definitely more on the NBA beat, more on the NBA beat nowadays. But what I will say is I'm intrigued by the fact that Virginia and Baylor are 2 programs that have always been consistent when it comes to regular season performance and how it leads to tournament performance before they actually reach the NCAA March Madness tournament. Those 2 programs are known to be dominant and excellent in all platforms per se, all the way up until those big moments in the March Madness tournament. When they get there, it's always, for the most part, they have deep runs, but it's also very much hit or miss. When you talk about over the past few years, Virginia has always found their way somehow to the Elite Eights, sometimes the Final Fours, and the one time they did break through with DeAndre Hunter being there to win that one championship. And then shortly after that, you have Baylor coming through the ranks, and they won their championship, led by Coach Mitchell and Davion Mitchell and them. So I'm not going to say or speak on the players' perspective, because that's not in my book right now. However, what I will say is the history between both of those programs playing against each other on this type of a stage, we might be looking at what that rematch might be come tournament time in March Madness. And I'm going to be really intrigued to see how this game plays out now. And if they somehow reach around and come back again in the tournament, how much different they're going to be during those primetime lights. Because at the end of the day, this is going to be a competitive game based on the fact that Coach Drew, because both of the teams are long, they're lengthy, and they play very disciplined basketball. So I know it's going to be a good game to watch. But I want to see how this game plays out now and how it compares to what we might see down the line during March Madness time, and see what the difference is going to be from that point on.
Well, one player I give you, just to keep it short and sweet, that you should have your eyes on in that Virginia-Baylor matchup is a true freshman by the name of Keontae George. He's 19 years old. He's a 6'4" guard out of Louisville, Texas. Partook in the McDonald's All-American game that took place here at Wintrust Arena this past spring. Was also in the Jordan Brand Classic. Went to IMG Academy with Jarris Walker, another guy who could be a future lottery pick, who committed to Houston and is a freshman in Houston. Just had a 20-plus point game against St. Joseph in a win for them, top 5 program in the country. One thing I like about Keontae George, though, is that he can score with the best of them, bro. And he's a guy that you're going to likely see get selected in the lottery of the 2023 draft as well. I know Davion Mitchell, as we mentioned, was a guy that dazzled a lot of people in Waco, Texas on the way to a national championship. To me, Keontae George has a chance to be the best guard that Scott Drew has ever had. He's already the highest ranked recruit. One thing that impresses me the most with this guy, man, he can do damage off or on the ball. And he has superb body control to finish, be it in the lane or even on a perimeter with 3-4 point plays or whatever. He reminds me a lot of Bradley Beal, and even has a little bit of remnants of Donovan Mitchell in his game, if I had to compare him to a couple of NBA players. And like I said, he can finish off the bounce or as a cutter off the ball. He's also one hell of a 3-point shooter, man. Like, you got to catch and shoot look with this guy. Hey, you can count it. He has a very smooth stroke, and he has NBA range as well. You know, because there was a couple shots he was taking, just looking at the highlight reels of him, where you like, man, that's not high school range. That could have counted for like 4 or even 5 points from where he was pulling up from. I really like his game a lot. I think if he shows that he can be just as good of a playmaker as he can as a scorer, and find a way to create for other players on the team, such as Adam Flagler, his backcourt running mate, and others, he's going to elevate up the draft board. If it wasn't for guys like Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson, you talk about a guy who might be considered as one of the upper echelon guys in this year's draft class. It still can be, especially if he goes on a run with Baylor. But to me, that's the player you got to watch out for. He just recently had a 20-point game against Norfolk State, and he played mostly off the ball. And then in the season opener, he had like 13 points and 7 assists, where he was really more so on the ball and setting up other guys for open 3-pointers and cuts inside the rim. I think that's a guy that you really got to keep your eye on, man. And even though he's a freshman, he's going to play with a level of poise that'll make you think he's an upperclassman. He's very mature, and he's someone that I would not be shocked if he was to go within the top 5 of the draft. Most of the mock boards have him within the top 10. He's originally from Louisville, Texas, but he went to school at IMG Academy, which is in Bradenton, Florida. That's a guy that you definitely got to keep your eyes on, as he is among the top of the top when you consider the guards in that class of 2022 and coming in for 2023 into the NBA.
Okay, that's something I'm definitely gonna be paying attention to. I'm definitely gonna try to watch that game and get as much insight on that one. So make sure you have your phone ready. But this next game that we talked about, when you talk about Illinois, UCLA, as journalists, we love storylines. We love headlines.
For sure.
So the headlines of having Chicago's own Mari Bailey playing against the hometown, the big college of the hometown of U of I, especially coming off of back-to-back Big Ten championships. That's something I'm going to be paying attention to, and I want to see how Mari Bailey's game is going to play when it comes to U of I's defense. Because if anything about U of I, yeah, they had a nice offense because Io was leading the movement, as well as Kofi Coburn. But at the end of the day, they were a defensive-minded team. Brad Underwood made sure that defense was always on point. And Amari Bailey, we know he's a gift, a hell of a talent offensively. But I want to see how he matches up against that perimeter defense of U of I, which we know they are very capable of shutting down the best of the best. So that's definitely something I'm going to see and pay attention to when it comes to that specific matchup or storyline with that game.
But to add to your point on Amari Bailey, that's definitely going to be a matchup to watch going up against his hometown program, as you alluded to, the Illinois Fighting Illini. Even though they're in Champaign, that's always been the preeminent program across the Chicagoland area that all of us grew up following, and we still follow, locally. But when you talk about Illinois' defense, I got a player who I think is going to help elevate that defense to another level for everybody to watch out for, and that's Ty Rodgers, a guy who is originally from Saginaw, Michigan, but starred in his senior season at Thornton out in Harvey, who was led by Ty Streets, is the head coach there at that program. He also played under Ty Streets for Mean Streets on the AAU circuit. 6'6", 200-pound wing who is a versatile playmaker, man. Can defend multiple positions on the floor, can also lead your offense, direct it, guide it. Think about a guy like Draymond Green with Miles Bridges' athleticism. He's a stat sheet stuffer. It's Dick Vitale, and then we'll say on ESPN. He's a guy who is a high impact player, and even though he's undersized, he has a lot of girth and muscle to where you're not going to be able to move him. And I think a lot of guys in the Big Ten are going to have some trouble with him. And that's a player who, if Brad Underwood continues to recruit at the level in which he has, he can build his program around, as well as Sky Clark, the 5-star point guard, is another guy that you have to watch out for as well. This Illinois team has a lot of talent. Matt Mayer, Baylor transfer, who captured a national championship with Baylor a couple of years ago. Besides Davion Mitchell and Jared Butler and those guys, Adam Flagler was also a part of that program at the time as well, who's the senior guard next to Keontae George at Baylor this season. I really like what Illinois is doing, but Amari Bailey is also a player to watch in his own right. 5-star recruit, a guy that can get it in the mid-range, post smaller guards up, about 6'5", long, lanky. He really makes his mark in the mid-range area, but also defensively as well when it comes to shutting down opposing guards. Him and Tiger Campbell in that backcourt form a nice 1-2 punch for UCLA under Mick Cronin. But I want to move on to the big-time matchup between the Blue Bloods, number 4 Kentucky versus number 2 Gonzaga in Spokane. They're going to square off for the first of 6 matchups set to take place over the next 6 years. As Coach Cal and Mark Few recently reached an agreement during the offseason between the two programs to meet up over that time span, starting this Sunday evening at 6:30 p.m. Central Time on ESPN. One player I know I'm going to have my eye on is a guy that I had the privilege of covering when he was in high school, Antonio Reeves. He was the first player in Illinois State's program in the last 20 years to average at least 20 points or more in a season, which he did his junior year before transferring over to Kentucky. 6'5" senior guard, can light it up. He was the best shooter in the state as a sophomore, in my opinion, when he was at Kenwood. Transferred, played at Shadow Mountain under Mike Bibby for a year before coming back home and closing up his high school career at Simeon. This guy's a real humble kid. He's all about his work and business. Used to get up 1,000 shots a day. I remember when I went over his house and interviewed him, as soon as he was getting done with the interview, he was like, hey, I'm going to train. And he recently had an incredible debut against Howard, where he poured in over 20 points. And I think he hit about 6 triples. I think he set a record for most 3-pointers in a Kentucky debut by a transfer. So that's a guy that people really need to have their eyes on. He's a guard, but he can play a little bit of forward because he's long and lanky when Cal likes to run those 3-guard lineups. I think that's a player who, if he has a big-time year for the Wildcats, could potentially sneak on a lot of draft boards. He was named second team All Missouri Valley Conference last year. He struck when the iron was hot, had a lot of offers. DePaul offered him, but Kentucky was the biggest one, and Calipari was able to swoop him last minute.
Yeah, that's a very good player that I've heard about, and I'm excited to see what he does in that game. I'm gonna go on the opposite side and go with honestly the main guy that everybody know about. I gotta see what Drew Timme gonna do, baby.
Yeah.
Ooh,
old school big.
You gotta see Drew with the old school headband and and him coming to this game because could have went pro, decided not to go pro, stay back and get that NIL money, which I don't blame him, my brother. I don't blame you. But at the same time, for me, you could tell this year he's on a vengeance tour because past 3 years he's been there, Gonzaga either was supposed to win it all and they failed, or they were not highly considered to be one of those top programs to go all the way. They go further than expected, but still don't get to the mountaintop. He's someone that, after going through all those up and downs, I know he's going to want to not just go to the mountaintop, but get the 10 commandments to bring down back to the Gonzaga, right? So because of that, this is his make it or break a year coming out as a senior. I want to see how he plays and continues to ball against the best of the best. And what other way to do it than to go against someone in Kentucky, with Coach Calipari, who is known for getting the best of the best. I'm excited to see how that goes. And I want to see how his skill set compares to the bigs that Kentucky does have.
Yeah, absolutely. Gonzaga, they had a #1 overall seed last year. They were led by the play of Chet Holmgren and Drew Timme. I believe they got knocked out in the Sweet 16 last year or Elite 8 round. Like they were really projected to take the national championship in the eyes of most experts, but they fell short after falling short in the national championship game a season prior with an undefeated record on the line that came to a halt against Baylor when they had Corey Kispert and Jalen Suggs, who are now in the NBA with the Washington Wizards and Orlando Magic, respectively. But yeah, Drew Timme is a guy, he's an old school big. He played with his back to the basket. And in the NBA game, that's not as popular as it once used to be. But if he was coming out in a different time, this dude would be a box office guy. Like he would be a top draft pick. I think he will get drafted because he comes from a winning program and he's a player with a winning pedigree. He can do all the little things that impact the game that don't always show up on the stat sheet, as great as he is statistically. Rim protector, solid rebounder, just overall one hell of a fundamental player. But before we move away from college basketball, is there going to be a ton of draft prospects that we get a chance to see over the course of this season, from Jarris Walker, the forward from Houston, Nick Smith, the guard out of Arkansas, Imani Bates, man. This dude came back onto the scene in his official Eastern Michigan debut. He's been through hell and back, caught 2 felony charges for possession of a gun, but found a way to get those charges overturned after, that news came out. He was suspended, but once he got the charges overturned, he was reinstated back into the program, set out the season opener, but came back and made his debut against number 22 Michigan the other night. And he caught everybody's attention. He had 30 points, hit 7 of his first 9 shots on the night. And I believe he finished the night with, if I have my stats correctly, 12 for 19 from the floor. Almost helped Eastern Michigan knock off the Wolverines as they lost by a score of 88-83. What was your thoughts on Imani's performance, bro? He looked like the Imani of old. That wasn't the Imani that we got a chance to see in Memphis. We saw certain flashes, but Penny had him playing more on the ball as he was seeking to learn how to become a point guard. I think a lot of people fail to realize that this guy went to college as a 17-year-old, and now he's 18. And because of everything that's transpired, people have kind of wanted to label him as a bust, but he's not even in the league yet. What was your thoughts on his debut for Eastern Michigan, man? I think he sent a message that was loud and clear.
Oh, Coach Stubbs, I wish you had him. Oh, I wish Coach Stubbs had him. We was in the running, man. We was in the running.
I forgot about
he was right there.
He was in the running for DePaul.
We was in that final 3.
Michigan over DePaul. Yeah, DePaul did come in the final 3.
Oh, that final 3, boy, and I wish we had him. Yeah, I wish we had him, boy, because he was nasty. He was nasty. And the way he had Tupac's song playing in the background, How Do You Want It? How does it feel? How do you want it, baby? You want it in your car? You want the step back 3? You want me to go to the lane? You want me to do the floater over you? You want me to shoot the mid-range and ISO ball? Let me drop these buckets for you. And then after the game, how does it feel, baby? How does it feel to beat me, to watch me drop 30 on you? Like, he just made it look so effortlessly. And the fact that what got me was his range from his bag perspective. Obviously, we knew he was skilled. We knew he had the talent to do all those things. But when you put him in isolation mode, there's a reason why you look at this kid and people are like, oh, dang, he's like a smaller Kevin Durant. There's a reason why people put those comparisons out there. He showed you why in that game. And he also showed you that, honestly, matchups, when you talk about, it's all about situations, right? Memphis wasn't a situation for him. Sometimes you have to go to a school that may not be known for like that, just to make sure you get the opportunity to really showcase your full skill set. That's one of the things that I think he learned playing in Memphis. Yeah, he didn't play a lot at Memphis due to injury, things of that sort. But when he was playing, even though he wasn't his full self, he couldn't perform the way that he wanted with the lineup that Memphis had. And I think him going to Eastern Michigan, a better situation where he could be more of the focal point of the offense. You saw him release himself and say, yo, I'm here, I'm arrived. This is who I really am. And that's something special to watch. Now, obviously, I just wish I was able to see it in the royal red. But, I can't even fault him, man. I can't even fault him for that. The dude was balling. It really reminded me of what it was like last season watching Javon Freeman Liberty drop 25 and have the overall game that he did when he was playing at DePaul. That's what watching that game reminded me of. So much excitement, so much thrill, so much aggressive isolation ball, and not just isolation ball, but seeing him execute those plays at the efficient rate that he did. It was just a beautiful talent to see. That now, college basketball wise, that's the one game I did see. That's the one game I did see.
I think everybody did. It was one of those games. Yeah, it was one of those games, bro, where you had to pause and stop what you were doing to witness it once you saw it become a trending topic across Twitter. Honest to God. I saw the highlights many times over the course of last weekend following the aftermath of the game. And what I saw was a guy who was playing in a manner akin to the way he played when he was in high school. And that was off of the ball. And when Imani Bates is off of the ball, he could get it with anybody. He could get into any act. He doesn't need too many dribbles, too many moves to get his shot off. Mm-hmm. And off the ball, coming off screens, firing. Then once he got hot, took a couple heat check shots, but they were within the flow of the offense. And once he got pumped up, I think we saw a version of Imani Bates that we had been missing for the first time in at least the last couple of years. He looked like a guy who knew that this game had nearly been taken away from me following my incident with the gun charge, which were dropped. And now I've been reinstated into this program and I have new life. And when after he hit that three and he declared it, when they put the camera on him, this is my city. I was like, yeah, it's on now. I really thought that they were going to beat Michigan. They had Michigan on the ropes. And everybody talks about Imani Bates. Yeah, everybody talks about Imani Bates, but Noah Farrakhan had a hell of a game as well, who's another big-time prize transfer that they got recently out of East Carolina, about a year ago. And he put up double figures and had a hell of a performance, was hitting some tough shots around the lane and so forth. They were giving him a run for their money, but Imani was doing some things even similar to what he was doing in Memphis, like scoring off of backdoor cuts when he had that alley-oop and, was dancing a little bit. He let loose in a way that I have not seen him do on a college basketball stage. And I hope that the best is yet to come for him, because if it is, George Gervin better be concerned, being a former Eastern Michigan alum, about some of the records in his record book, at least for single season records, that is, because I think Imani gonna kick you in the door. And I think if Eastern Michigan makes a run in the MAC with the talent that they have, and Imani has familiarity playing with a lot of these guys, being from Ypsilanti, which is where Eastern Michigan is, and that's why he decided to go to Eastern Michigan based on what was reported and said through various backdoor channels and stuff. Man, like they could give some teams come March Madness time and run for their money if they get past round one. I'm just saying, I don't know who the favorite is in the MAC, but I think they got the max attention just as much as they did the nation's attention. I believe that Eastern Michigan was projected to finish 7th in the MAC. I don't know how they came to that conclusion, knowing that Imani Bates is still an 18-year-old kid who was considered by many to be the best prospect in all of prep basketball, regardless of class, prior to him going to Memphis. I really hope that we give this guy a chance, but I'm not even thinking about his draft prospects right now. I'm just glad to see that the guy was back on a stage that he belonged on and was performing under the big time lights the way that I think many of us believed and knew that he could always do. Granted, he got some tournament action with Memphis a little bit, but this was different. This was very much different. And man, I saw a professional scorer out there playing with boys. And if he keeps that up, I think the future is still bright. You heard what Juwan Howard said in the post-game press conference. He still has a chance to do some excellent things in the game of basketball. And that was another guy who missed out on Imani Bates that tried to recruit him. I know he had to be cringing just as much as you were, Josh, that he not doing it in DePaul colors. It was a lot of schools that still wanted him in spite of what happened in Memphis. We both know that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, although Juwan Howard, I don't know if he has to cringe too much considering he's coaching at his alma mater. He got the crispiest lining that any older dude coach can ever have. But at the end of the day, yeah, I cringe too because, like you said, when you're that close to getting that elite of a talent, it don't matter where you go. You just put him in the right situation, scenario on the court, dude's gonna shine. And Imani Bates, like you said, I think having that humbling experience, knowing that this game really could have been taken away from me, especially if that's your calling card, like that's all you're banking on, and being able to have to be reinstated in the way that he was. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that changed him to a point where you saw the Imani Bates that we did, and we known him from over these past couple of years. So I'm excited. Like I said, I'm excited to see him on the court. I can't wait to see what he does. And yeah, I do hope he makes the March Madness tournament because he's gonna make it. He's gonna make the game that much more fun to watch, man. Because he's a special talent, and I just look forward to seeing what he has to do.
100%. But I want to segue away from the campus and the college basketball scene back to the NBA, where me and Josh gonna play a game real quick. Truth or trash. Let me know whether or not you think the following rumors that have been reported over the last week are valid or not. And, state your reason why. We're gonna start off in the Motor City in Detroit with Bojan Bogdanovic. According to sources, 33-year-old player, an 8-year veteran who was traded to the Pistons from the Jazz prior to the start of training camp, has recently been on the radar of the Los Angeles Lakers dating back to this summer, as well as the Phoenix Suns, according to Yahoo's senior NBA reporter Jake Fisher. He inked a 2-year, $39.1 million extension with the Pistons prior to the end of last month, keeping him under contract until the 2024-25 season. Bogdanovic is currently averaging a career-high 20.3 points per game and shooting 43% from downtown on nearly 7 attempts per contest from long range through his first 14 games in Detroit. I'm just going to be straight up with you. Do you believe that Bojan Bogdanovic is on the move? Is it true or is it trash?
Trash until the trade deadline. I don't think they're really trying to. I don't think they really are trying to trade him right now, especially since you just signed the man to a 2-year extension worth $40 million. I don't think. I think that if they knew he wasn't trying to stay or wasn't willing to stay at least another year or two, they wouldn't have gave him that deal. However, hey, money does talk in different ways, and you never know with the way the Pistons are down the line, or maybe he's not trying to move. But what if a team like the Lakers comes through and offers them a deal that's like, hey, you can't pass this up if you're talking about getting good talent back, considering that the Pistons are in a rebuild type of stage. What, you may not want to pass that up. So, and I think eventually down the line, there's going to be some team that's going to make an offer to them that even though they want him to stay, and maybe he even wants to stay, I think they eventually going to pull the trigger, because the current state where the Pistons are right now does not equate to the caliber talent and where he should be playing. We're talking about what he brings to the table from an offensive defensive perspective for contenders. And I do believe contenders are going to be calling, and he may not want to go, but Detroit, everybody said they can't be bought until you put the money on the table and you realize, oh, he can be bought. It's the same way with this. You may not want to get traded or anything, but if you're talking about a team that may be in the mood looking for, maybe wanting to trade some draft picks for some shooting, that's the top of the league. Maybe I don't know, maybe another Golden State. I don't know. I'm just saying, something that they might be willing to put some on the table and they need some extra reinforcements on the wing. I'll go over there. So I don't know.
You know what?
I don't.
You know what? I didn't think about Golden State, but that's another conversation for another day. But Golden State does have a piece that could be enticing to a small market in Detroit. I don't think I have to say his name. I'm just going to say he's an all-star player, and I'm going to leave it at that. Actually, two. One of them is from Michigan. I'll just leave it at that, though. Do I believe that Bojan Bogdanovic is on the move? I'm going to say truth. And I'm going to tell you why. Even though he signed a 2-year, $39.1 million extension, got to think about it like this. If he did not sign that contract, he would have been set to enter free agency after this season, which would have forced Detroit's hand in regards to moving him. They would have had to move him as an expiring immediately. Now, it buys them time to move him, but it also makes him a more enticing commodity. Because if I'm a team like the Phoenix Suns, and I know that I have to find a way to get rid of Jay Crowder after the situation that's unfolded down in the desert prior to the start of this season, and Cam Johnson just recently went down, tearing his meniscus, and he's out for an indefinite period of time, Bojan Bogdanovic is mighty attractive to me. Matter of fact, he's more attractive than I would say Ben Gordon is, because I know I have him on lock for the next year and a half at least, if I get him prior to the conclusion of this year's trade deadline. So I think that contract actually makes him a hot commodity. I could also see, though, why Detroit might want to hold on to him. They talk a lot about how he's been a vital presence, not only on the floor with his contributions, from helping space the floor with his ability to shoot, putting the ball on the deck and scoring, but in his defense, but being a mentor to guys like Cade Cunningham, Killian Hayes, Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, and so forth, pointing out a lot of things that happen on the floor as they go on, whether he's out on the floor or whether he's on the bench. And they said that they really appreciate his leadership in the locker room. And, Dwayne Casey is attested to that, as well as Troy Weaver, the general manager of the Pistons. I understand that they are 3-11 and that they are in a rebuilding mode, and they can use his services because they have proven to help keep them in a lot of games, even though they've lost a lot of games. But that contract, if I'm a general manager, I'm saying, hey, I don't have to worry about him opting out. Like, all I have is a year and a half with that. I would consider that. I would consider that. And Phoenix is a team that, even though they have wing depth with Mikal Bridges, getting a Bojan Bogdanovic over there with Chris Paul and Devin Booker will provide them with one hell of a third option. And not only one hell of a third option, but one of the top foursomes in the league when you put him with Mikal Bridges in there and DeAndre Ayton. That'd be one hell of a starting lineup, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. That definitely is definitely an enticing situation to look out for. I just don't know if Detroit, even though, like I said, they're 3-11, I just don't know if they're really willing to go that far into trading him because of the fact, like you mentioned, he's such a valuable asset on and off the floor for this young team. I kind of look at it like a Thaddeus Young type of situation when he was here in Chicago. There are plenty of times where, the Bulls traded him to get good quality pieces back from other teams that were actually inquiring about his services. But he was so valuable to this Bulls franchise that they was willing to just let him stay and bring the impact that he did on both ends of the floor and let him walk. So I'm not saying that those two from a player's perspective equate each other. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is there is some type of similar situations when it comes to deciding if it's really worth moving this person right now, considering what he is feeling from a void perspective on this roster, even though we're not winning. And that's something like he's embracing. And it seems like, Detroit is willing to embrace until, like you said, the trade deadline, some team's going to offer him something that they probably didn't expect or want at that present moment. I think they will end up getting rid of him. It's just not right now.
Yeah, I mean, I see both sides of the spectrum. But when you're a rebuilding team, I will say this. If a contender offers you a draft pick or two as compensation, that'll be a tough deal to pass up, especially if they're willing to offer you first-round draft picks. Right. I think that could be just enticing enough for Troy Weaver to consider. If it doesn't happen this year, I would definitely keep my eye on it going forward into next season for damn sure. And that's why I say it's true. But I understand why you can see it as trash. But as of right now, I'm going to say true because I'm looking not only at the now, but at the later. But I'll move on because I want to get into another big man who we recently talked about Joel Embiid, but Miles Turner of the Indiana Pacers. It was an article that came out at the top of this week from Greg Swartz of Bleacher Report titled 5 Shocking Trades That Could Happen Sooner Than Later. One of the trades that he had involved Turner being moved by the Indiana Pacers to the Jazz for Talen Horton-Tucker, Walker Kessler, the rookie big man that they just recently drafted out of Auburn, and Rudy Gay with a 2023 first-round pick that is lottery protected. Utah was the first team this season to reach 10 wins in the Western Conference. They sit among the top 5 in the Western Conference playoff picture as of this recording. We never would have expected for the Utah Jazz to be buyers at the trade deadline, would we? And do you think that they will? Are you saying truth on that? Or are you saying trash? Because I don't think we can look at Utah in the same boat as we once did. Even if they were to tank, the odds of getting the top 2 pick looking very slim right now in Salt Lake City. Danny Ainge got a reason to be concerned about the plan because it's not going according to plan.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. But I'm going to say trash because I'm going to say trash in this regard.
Okay.
Miles Turner isn't the person they should be going after. There's other options out there that, quite frankly, the team itself is doing well in that department. You got another big man out there that's thriving in Lauri Markkanen. You have reinforcements in that big man department that are doing justice for you, considering your circumstance as far as what you thought was going to happen versus what the reality is. So either way, you're in like a win-win situation with what you already have. Now, obviously, that's going to change when you talk about other players like Jordan Clarkson, Rudy Gay, Mike Conley. Like those guys, yeah, those are people that you will have to eventually, wean off the team. Already made it clear heading toward a rebuilding stage. But Miles Turner, as a veteran guy, with what he brings to the table, does not need to go to a rebuilding team. Otherwise, he should just stay where he's at. So I just don't see Miles Turner going there. I do think Utah's gonna make some moves. Don't get it twisted. They got some reinforcements to get rid of. But I'm saying trash because it's not gonna be Miles Turner. I think it's gonna be somebody else. But not Miles Turner.
This one had me thinking. I never would have thought that Miles Turner would be considered as the Rudy Gobert replacement. And even without Rudy Gobert, the Jazz are among the top of the top among teams defensively. I believe they're in the top 10 in defensive rating. If they aren't right now, I know that they have been through at least majority of the year thus far. I'm gonna say trash. I only because I'm with you. I just can't see them going after Miles Turner. Walker Kessler has provided them with some incredible minutes off of the bench, particularly doing exactly what Miles Turner has been doing, and that's blocking shots. And I believe once he tightens up his three-point shot, he's eventually going to work his way into becoming the starting five next to Markkanen and Vanderbilt in Utah's front court. I don't understand why you would give him up. And I really don't even understand why Indiana would want to make that move when they already have a young big man in Isaiah Jackson who's been providing them with stellar minutes as of late. So I think that they will be buyers at the deadline. But in regards to Miles Turner going to Utah, I'm going to call trash on that. But a lot depends on what goes down between the next several weeks. Although I will say this, I don't know too many teams that have won 10 out of their first 14 games to start the season that end up with high draft lottery odds. I will say that. So I don't view them as a seller. I don't think they're going to buy high, but if they're top 4 or 5 in the West and the conference is there for the taking, why not? But like you said, though, Josh, I do agree that there will be some moves made. Only question is, will players be coming in or will guys be getting moved out? It might be a little bit of both, but initially we thought it was just going to be a complete fire sale in Salt Lake City under Danny Ainge.
Well, it's Danny Ainge. You never know what you're going to get. He's a finessing king.
Man.
He knows trades for it. So you never know what you're going to get. You know, you may get a mixture of buy and sell. And your style, you never know. His stock market could be looking quite well, considering what the team's looking like now versus where the team's moving forward. So you never know. He could make that trade, period, give up much, but depending on how that other team does, they got that lottery pick that could come in handy for the Victor, for the Victor and the Scoot Hendersons of the world in that draft class. You just never know, because Danny Ainge is a maestro of what he does. So. Like you said, I do think they're going to be buyers still, but Miles Turner isn't going to be involved in that. It's going to be someone else that may be younger, maybe can fill more fill more depth per se, and maybe especially when we talk about the perimeter aspect of things. I think you're going to get a lot of that, to keep the team afloat for now, prior to them making maybe any other big moves post the draft, at least considering what happens by the end of the season.
Moving on. In the third part of the Truth or Trash segment, to talk about a player who recently became the first since Michael Jordan to begin the NBA season with 13 straight games of 25 points or more, and that's Kevin Durant. This man continues to stay in trade rumors. I don't know what's going on in Brooklyn, man, but they always in the news, and they just couldn't end the week without being in the news, in spite of a great week on the floor. According to an Eastern Conference executive who spoke with NBA inside man Sean Devaney of Heavy Sports, the Sixers remain interested in pursuing all-star forward Kevin Durant from the Brooklyn Nets, although the number one question is whether the Nets would even bother with considering any offer from Philadelphia in the wake of what transpired a season ago with James Harden, who, as we all know, was dealt away to the Sixers by Brooklyn in exchange for Ben Simmons in an all-star blockbuster swap prior to the conclusion of last year's trade deadline. Josh, are the Nets engaging with the Sixers in yet another deal prior to the conclusion of the trade deadline for the second straight year? Do you buy this rumor? I'm just going to be blunt. I get into mine after Josh speaks his piece. I'm going to say this is trash. Completely as of now. I can understand the Sixers being interested, but I can't understand the Nets being interested, especially after the week that they just had and after officially locking up Jacques Vaughn for the next year or so. I think it was a 2-year deal that they gave him. After, that we talked about that last week about whether or not they would do that. They ended up doing that. You buying this rumor, bro? I had to ask it. I had to ask it because I laughed at it myself. I caught it on my way to the Bulls game last night on Sunday. Yeah, I can't. I don't buy it.
The first thing that comes to my mind is the 50 Cent meme where he's driving off after he laughs. That's me, bro.
I know what you're talking about.
I'm like, ha! You think? What does Brooklyn look like after giving away all their picks? Philly, how you doing? I see you're thriving over there. Great. I'm glad to see you thriving. We know what the guy that we traded you. We kind of want our picks back, so we'll give you Kevin Durant to make that happen. No, like one, you're dumb as hell to think you're gonna get rid of your best player like that for draft picks. Nah, that's not. Kevin Durant has officially locked in with you for 4 years after this season. Ain't no way in hell I'm letting this brother go unless it's that detrimental. That's number one. Number two, Kevin Durant, we heard the saga already. I want traded because of X, Y, and Z and all these other demands and stuff. To be honest with you, he getting what he wants. Okay, he has Kyrie by his side. Steve Nash, you and a brother, and Jacques Vaughn, who he respects, to take over the reins. And now you're winning. Now you're winning basketball games again. Kevin Durant never wanted to leave. He just wanted to say, okay, all right, now you're making these moves, and I'm getting tired of them. I don't like what y'all doing. Y'all need to get it together. That was just him pulling their hands, saying, if I haven't been involved before, guess what? I'll be involved now because clearly what you're giving me ain't working. That's all that was. He just wanted he just wanted a little bit of control. He wanted some love. He wanted a little love from the front office, man. That's all that was. Love me enough to be involved. Now that's happening. He ain't going nowhere. He signed in for 4 years for a reason. It wasn't just because when he can easily go somewhere else and make that much more money somewhere else. This is all trash, man. It's trash. The trash is so bad, you can open up the garbage can, you can tell there's some baby dump on top of some other stuff in there. That's how trash this thing is, man. Like, he ain't going nowhere. He loves, from what I hear and have heard, he loves Brooklyn. From what I heard, he loves Brooklyn. Didn't really want to leave or anything like that. He's trying to utilize his power as a star player of a franchise to put the line in check, to keep the front office in line and in check. And that's what you're going to have no choice but to listen to what this man does. And clearly it's worked, because if he didn't get everything, it's like Chris Rock at The Longest Yard. We didn't get the whole chocolate bar, but we did get a Hershey's Kiss. Like, he didn't get the whole chocolate bar. Steve Nash is gone. He says Steve Nash or Sean Marks got to go. One or two got to go. Steve gone. And as you can see, that Hershey Kiss is being fulfilled right now as part of that chocolate bar. So he ain't going nowhere. He's perfectly fine. Just wait till Kyrie come back. They'll figure all this mess out. They'll be okay. They'll be all right.
Man, I tell you what they've been doing without Kyrie. They've been playing some amazing defense as of late. Jacques Vaughn got them guys moving their puppies. This is not looking like a team that was dead last in defensive efficiency under Steve Nash. I tell you that much. They are not looking like that at all. I got a chance to catch them against the Clippers on League Pass when they were in LA this past weekend. And I must say, I was impressed with the defensive effort. Edmund Sumner is giving them some quality minutes. Seth Curry coming up big time in the fourth quarter, with 15 points to close out the deal and helping Kevin Durant shut it down. Kevin Durant has been amazing on the defensive end. I think he doesn't get enough credit for that. But back on the main topic of truth or trash, I think this is trash on many levels, because where do you even begin to do a deal if you're Brooklyn? Of course, if you're the Nets, you want Tyrese Maxey back. And if you're the Sixers, are you really going to give that up, knowing that he's the future guard that you might seek to build around, even should the day come that Joel Embiid wants out of Philly? Not that we've heard anything like that, but we know that in the NBA universe, where so much news is being reported over the course of a 24-hour span, you can never be caught off guard by things like that, as the association turns. shall I say. But I don't buy it. And I know you know some people, that's close to within the next organization, like a guy that's been familiar with doing shows with us on a War Media platform, and Brandon Robinson, better known to many as School B. I haven't heard him say anything like that. And that's why I wanted to ask you that, because I'm like, I can't see it, especially when he's still trying to get ingrained with a new head coach in Brooklyn, which, as you said, is what he wanted. And I always found the trade rumors to kind of be the story that was just holding the offseason by. Like, it was already a relatively dead offseason. We were so concerned about what KD was going to do, but we never ever heard KD speak publicly as much as he was tweeting. He never even tweeted about the fact that, hey, I want out from Brooklyn, and yes, this is true. So that's why I never bought it in the first place. I do buy the Sixers' interest in him, though. I buy that a ton because, of course, he has James Harden there. He has Joel Embiid there. Daryl Morey has always wanted to stockpile superstars in a quest to capture a championship no matter where he's been. He did it with Houston when he did the backcourt experiments with Chris Paul and James Harden, Russell Westbrook, James Harden. Even tried pairing James Harden with a big man in Dwight Howard in the midst of his prime. So he's always been a star hunter, but I just don't see how you make that deal happen. And where do you even start if you're Philly with crafting up a deal, knowing that Brooklyn is going to want Tyrese Maxey in that? And then if you're Brooklyn, it's like you're going to want as many picks as you can get back. And Daryl Morey don't give a damn about draft picks. I know that firsthand, just covering many of his teams in Houston. He traded virtually all of them in Houston during the James Harden era. Clint Capella was really like the only first-round draft pick that he ever had. But I don't see Brooklyn making that move. If Kevin Durant gets traded, I don't see him getting traded to a team that lies within not only the Eastern Conference, but the same division. I just don't see them doing that 2 straight years. No, you're not just going to help your buddy out, especially a buddy that happens to be a rival.
Yeah, that ain't happening, man. That's why I just laugh so much at these rumors sometimes, man, because, a lot of it, I will say that this is probably front office based. Like front office,
They said an Eastern Conference executive.
Yeah, it's definitely front office based, but these players run the league at the end of the day. And Kevin Durant ain't going nowhere unless he says officially, I want out. And like you said, he had and when he did submit his trade request, it was done in private. No one and that none of those details and information was really leaked like that. So I'm not buying this, man. I think Kevin Durant wants to stay, and he knows he wants to stay long term because he wants to play with the person that he's playing with right now in Kyrie Irving. That's why they teamed up together. So I think like I said, I think it's trash. It's definitely some trash, some BS going on around there. If you like trash, then hey, you can get it all from this rumor because it's all there. Like I don't know what it's not only it stinks, okay? It stinks.
I agree with you, but I want to move away from the truth or trash segment, great segment there, to going from the East Coast to the West Coast in Los Angeles, talking about the Clippers, who are 7-6 through their first 13 games this year on a young NBA season. Kawhi Leonard, recently he was the talking topic between Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce on their Showtime podcast, KG Certified Ticket and the Truth, where Paul Pierce offered a very interesting take, questioning why Kawhi's legacy can be mentioned alongside of LeBron and Kevin Durant while avoiding the same criticism as often injured forward and fellow All-Star peer Anthony Davis. He made a comment where he was saying that we don't hold Kawhi Leonard accountable. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because, of course, as we know, Kawhi, who starred in the first 2 games for the Clippers coming off of the bench, has missed the last 12 games due to nursing a left knee injury. Now, here's a guy who we know he sat out all of last season nursing from a torn ACL that he suffered and signed off on a massive extension prior to the start of last season. Why do you think we give Kawhi Leonard a pass? Is it because of the fact that he's a two-time NBA champion, a perennial all-star, a guy who was voted as the top 75 player among all NBA players during the league's 75th anniversary season? I'm glad that he actually brought that up. I'm not saying that I agree, but I do find it to be an interesting point because you don't hear a lot of criticism that comes towards Kawhi's way for not playing in the manner that you hear it being thrown onto Anthony Davis as well as Ben Simmons. Do you think we give Kawhi a pass because of his championship resume in spite of guys like Andrew Wiggins having more career points than Kawhi Leonard?
I think it's twofold.
Okay.
That is one of the main reasons for sure because of his winning pedigree. Before all those injuries took place, he not only became a two-time champion by winning with the San Antonio Spurs, but he also was the Finals MVP of that championship, as well as the Finals MVP of the Toronto Raptors championship, which is one of the most historical narratives that no one expected to come from that deal, in that offseason. And that's something that the NBA that hasn't been done in the NBA. So I think it's that, along with the fact that he is also a two-time Defensive Player of the Year award winner. So you have to consider those factors into play as well. But I also think it's the reason why he doesn't get as much criticism is because of the makeup of the team that he's on. He's playing with Paul George and other NBA stars. And if they're not all-stars, they're very talented role players, which they've always been to the playoffs every time he's been hurt. So it brings the rest to ask much of Kawhi because they already have a team makeup that, for the most part, supplements his injuries until a certain point. Anthony Davis was on a team that was trash, didn't win anything until Rajon Rondo and DeMarcus Cousins came through in New Orleans. And all he knew was that was the only thing he knew from a playoff perspective until the bubble. Then he won his championship. But what has transpired after that? Team hasn't done well. They haven't been back to the promised land. They haven't even sniffed. They barely sniffed Western Conference round series, if that. So when you are not just one of the faces of the franchise, but winning has to be attached to your name, Anthony Davis's resume doesn't match up to a Kawhi Leonard. And winning cures all in basketball.
I like to play devil's advocate on that. I understand the criticism that Anthony Davis gets. I'm not going to say that some of it isn't warranted. As much as, I love Anthony Davis as a player when he's healthy. But Anthony Davis is a champion. He has a ring.
Yeah.
Even though he had to go through some loops and hurdles, and we've never seen Anthony Davis propel teams single-handedly to playoffs outside of, I would say, 2015-16 when the Warriors got swept them. Or was it? It was 2014-15 when they swept them, when they got swept by Golden State on the run to their first championship that year. Outside of that, we haven't seen him single-handedly carry a team, but he does have accomplishments. Like, he's been to more All-Star games than Kawhi. He's won a championship, not as many. And I don't get me wrong, I love Kawhi Leonard, but I do think it's a valid question to ask. And yeah. I think we do give him a pass, but I had to ask this question because I recently had a conversation with a friend of mine prior to the conclusion of the 2010s decade. And we were naming our top stars, what would be our all-time starting five for the 2010s. And he was saying, you're going to include Kawhi Leonard over Russell Westbrook, even though Russell Westbrook for 3 straight years within that decade averaged a triple-double and was an MVP of the league and played close to 80 games a year, if not 75 to 82 games a year, night in, night out. We haven't seen Kawhi do that in the last several years. Now, I understand he's had some injuries and whatnot, but I find it very interesting. And even though the Clippers have been successful without Kawhi, if you look at the record of the Clippers since Kawhi and Paul George had played there starting during the 2019-20 season, they have a better record when Kawhi is in the lineup versus when he's out, even when it's just Paul George there. And then last year, they technically got to the playoffs, if you consider the play in the playoffs, but they didn't capture the AC in which they finished in. Is New Orleans took them out, and we saw how big of an absence Kawhi Leonard is when Paul George was out that game due to catching COVID. So I find it to be an interesting question and a talking point, because I would like to understand why. I know it's because he's a champion, but there have been many champions who have done this. Even LeBron didn't get that flack. Caught flack rather. He caught flack for wanting to sit out of games. But Kawhi Leonard, for some odd reason, does not. He's like the undisputed people's champ. When it comes to it, he gets away with it. Yeah, some people attack him for it, but not as much. And I thought Paul Pierce made a hell of a point with that, saying we don't hold him accountable for that. It's like we pick and choose. And do you think that the narrative around Kawhi has to do with that? The fact that he's led 2 different franchises to an NBA championship? Like, we know he'll always be forever indebted to the citizens of Toronto for what he did with the Raptors. But, like, is that really enough? Because when it's all said and done, I think Kawhi Leonard is a top 75 talent. But even in spite of all the accolades he's had and gained in his career to date, like, don't you think it's fair that we can still have some questions? Like, what if?
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
Or should he even be in the top 75?
I don't know. Now that's a conversation for another day with that one.
I'm just bringing this up because I hope that this engages other people who watch this show to have those discussions amongst themselves. But continue on,
Yeah, most definitely. I don't always agree with everything Paul Pierce says.
Me either.
I definitely don't. He lost me when he decided to put strippers and booties on his story. That he lost me with that, right? So I can't look at him and be like, I agree with you on a lot of stuff that he says. However, he got a point with this one. He got a point. And I agree with him. But part of it, to me too, another narrative of it is there's a different expectation when you come to Lakerland. Lakerland, it's all about the championships, all about the playoff experiences. You are the main team in Tinseltown, Hollywood, baby. Like, you are that franchise. If you're one of the main stars of that franchise, you are considered to be that guy within the city of angels. Compared to the Clippers, who's the little brother. They don't know what it's like to win championships. They haven't won anything. They just now started getting really into the playoffs when Kawhi Leonard and Paul George arrived. So, it's a thin line of responsibility and what expectations look like when you were certain franchises. And with the fact that Anthony Davis, yes, he fulfilled his duty as winning a championship in LA, helping being one of the main pioneers of that with next to the king himself. After that, it's an expectation. You're supposed to win or at least get close to winning every year.
That's true.
And as Anthony Davis being in his prime, LeBron at that time still being in mostly his prime, with those two together and the right reinforcements around them, you should be going deep in playoff runs. That's just the reality of what it's like to be a Laker. If you watch the Legacy of the Lakers documentary on Hulu, you will see Dr. Buss was like that. That Benny Buss family was like that with every Lakers team, period. Like, that's just the expectation of when you were. So it doesn't make it easier on him when you're following the likes of the Kobe Bryants, Magic Johnsons, Kareem Abdul-Jabbars, the Wilt Chamberlains, Jerry West, Elgin Baylors, Shaq. Those players that, especially from a big man perspective, you're following their footsteps after when you put on a Lakers uniform. Expectations are different, and now that LeBron is there, that's like that's double the pressure because you got to win while he's there in his prime. So I think that narrative plays a role too, because people don't look at the Clippers like they do with the Lakers. They look at the Lakers as the gods of LA.
That's true.
They look at the Clippers as the little brother, as the little star that's trying to get his shine, but he ain't really shining. And so the Lakers are the galaxy compared to the little star that the Clippers are. And until the Clippers win and start winning that way, it's like knowing what you will see in New York and Manhattan. Where the Brooklyn Nets are, they're on the rise, but guess what? Ain't nobody looking at the Nets. That's Knicks Nation over there because of that history.
That's a good comparison.
So I think it's the same. That plays a role in that conversation too.
I don't doubt that. Is the Lakers are more prevalent, and because of their lineage and history among the LA population than the Clippers, as well as nationally as well. But speaking of expectations, what brought about this discussion for Kawhi Leonard was the LA Clippers, a team in which he plays for. 7-6 through their first 13 games to start the year. They're within the middle of the pack in the Western Conference playoff picture. This was a team that a lot of us on paper prior to the start of the year expected to be an NBA Finals contender. Mm-hmm. It's still early, but considering Kawhi's injury history and whether or not he's going to be available consistently on a night-to-night basis, should we have tempered expectations for this group moving forward? Paul George, we know, is having a hell of a year. Ivica Zubac is averaging double-double numbers in career highs for the first time in his career. He really stepped his game up. Terrence Mann has played fairly solid thus far. Norman Powell has also been solid as well. Prior to them losing to the Nets, I believe they had won 4 out of their last 5 games. But should we have tempered expectations for this group and expect them to make it to the NBA Finals, even in spite of the addition of John Wall with Paul George, with a Kawhi Leonard who we don't know whether or not he's going to be available. Now, what we do know is that he's been cleared to play 5-on-5 and that he has been, and that sooner rather than later, he is being projected to return very soon, according to Tyronn Lue and the medical staff that's part of the Clippers organization.
I think it depends and varies on that need. It depends on his health overall and how often he can play. Because technically, if you're the Clippers, you don't need him right now. You really need him for when playoff time comes around. So as long as you can keep him somewhat healthy until the playoffs come, they'll be straight. So I still view them as not a complete lock-in, but a contender per se for the NBA Finals, most definitely. And a lot of it has to do with obviously the emergence of Paul George and the year that he's having. But you are the deepest team in this league. You have Norman Powell, you have Robert Covington, you got Nicholas Batum, you got Marcus Morris, you have, like you said, Zubac, and that point guard, John Wall, to go with Reggie Jackson, along with Terrence Mann. You have one of the deepest lineups from 1 to 15, if not the deepest in the league. This is why you got those players, because Kawhi Leonard may be problematic during the season from a health perspective. You can't trust that Kawhi Leonard is going to be playing all year long and then expect him to play all those games in the playoffs. You prepared for this by bringing those reinforcements. So, yeah, I expect them to still be NBA favorites because they have the depth to at least carry them to the hump. And as long as Kawhi Leonard can stay healthy, he has proven he can take a franchise home.
That's true. But how long do we continue to give him that benefit of the doubt, considering the fact that it's been 3 seasons now since he's reached the Mount Olympics of the NBA world? Like, I have to ask that question because It's not like when he was coming off of the injury in San Antonio, going to Toronto via trade, and he was a part of a team that was close many years, previously, where the only threat to them was Cleveland, who owned them. But once, LeBron left that picture, they had a shot in a wide open Eastern Conference. And that team was ready for that. Like, they had guys with playoff experience. Not to say that these guys don't. They're battle tested, but in a Western Conference where matchups, just like in the East and in playoffs in general, all of it comes down to matchups. Don't you think that's a huge risk? Like, at some point, Kawhi gonna have to come and play, because if you're not careful, you're gonna mess around and be in a position or a situation where you might find yourself in a play-in round for the second straight year in a row. And I don't think that's what Tyronn Lue and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard want to be. I understand, that getting the top 3 seed may not be the most important, but you definitely want to finish in that top 6.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And honestly, when you talk about a criticism perspective, yeah, time's ticking. Especially since, me personally, I don't see him outlasting the contract he got now. If he doesn't, after this contract, he might be done. So you need to take every ounce you can out of Kawhi Leonard while the window is still open to win. And honestly, this is the best year to do it, because you got the best bench, along with arguably one of the best starting 5 lineups in the league to get it done. So with Golden State tripping, with and other teams that aren't fulfilling the best roles right now, but you can expect them to slip maybe down the line, the Clippers is the one team that can emerge and take that top 3 seed and keep things moving. But like you said, in order for that to happen, regular season, not tripping too much over. As long as Paul George can stay healthy. Everybody else, I think we can work with. But at least by All-Star break, going into the playoff, I better see Kawhi Leonard playing every night and getting that camaraderie and getting back to the flow of things with the team. Because this offseason, when it comes to the playoffs and trying to win that championship, that's a path that only he knows what it's like to get there. And no one else outside of Ty Lue, your head coach, knows how to get there. So he's going to be needed to help get this team over the hump. And that's the only way it can be done, is if he's up front.
Good point. Want to move on, though, as we get to the closing minutes of our show. What games should people have their eyes on the lookout for going forward the rest of this week from Wednesday onward?
Man, you just never know with this league, man. There's just so much
I'm glad you brought that up, because just real quick, I just want to point out, like, there are currently 10 teams that are either 500, a game above 500, or a game below 500 entering this week, which is week 5 of the NBA season, as we get in this recording right now.
For sure, man. I think for me, though, one game that I do want to check out, the Brooklyn Nets against the Trailblazers on Thursday.
Okay.
I want to see Kevin Durant square off against Damian Lillard. And we haven't talked much about the Trailblazers. They're the number 1 team in the Western Conference right now.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
Like, D. Lil has been on a tear. He's on a run. He's on a roll for that MVP running this season. He's gunning for it. And he's showing it by the way this team is playing right now. And with the Brooklyn Nets playing as good as they are currently, under that new leadership and direction of Jacques Vaughn, Kevin Durant, at the level he's playing against Damian Lillard, is going to be primetime basketball to watch, man.
I agree. I like the way Brooklyn's looking right now. Portland, I got to give it to them. I thought that they were tricking us during the trick-or-treat segment when we talked about teams that were off the high start. That defense is looking somewhat legitimate. Jeremy Grant's looking like a 3-level scorer, solid number 3 option, getting buckets in isolation right now. Shaedon Sharpe has been a nice contributor off of the bench, even started in some games for a team that hasn't had Dame in action for 5 games early in the year to be where they are right now, I got to tip my cap to him. Chauncey Billups was doing a hell of a job. But I got 3
you owe
games
me a
for you.
steak.
I might have to because you called. I shouldn't have doubted, but and Simons has been shooting the hell out the basketball as well. Kudos to him. But I'm gonna go with is for the games of the week. I got a different game every day. Wednesday, Cleveland and Milwaukee. Cavs have lost 4 straight after getting out to a hot start. Bucks might be without Grayson Allen, Drew Holiday, and Giannis due to nursing non-COVID illness, sprained ankle injuries, and a wrist ligament injury. But as long as Giannis, who's been battling through left knee soreness, is able to go, I think that's going to be a big-time matchup. That was a game that I had circled for us to watch a couple weeks ago. I had forgot about it. That's a game that I think people need to have their eyes on. We're going to learn a lot about Cleveland. How do you know whether or not they for real and if they're able to respond well to adversity in a big-time environment like that? Pfizer form, it'll be rocking. On Thursday, I'm going to go with San Antonio and Sacramento. Kings have won 6 out their last 8. Entering the week as of this recording, De'Aaron Fox has been on a tear in clutch scoring, shooting 64% from the floor, 57% from three-point land, hasn't even missed a free throw in that span as well. He's on pace to join Oscar Robertson as the only player in Kings history to average 25 points, 5 assists, and 5 rebounds in a single season. That's exclusive company to be with the Big O out in Sacramento. Sabonis is playing well. Kevin Huerter's been a hell of an addition. Keegan Murray has been a man amongst boys for his rookie season. Slowly but surely finding his foot in the league. Mike Brown doing a hell of a job coaching this group. And last but not least, Friday night, OKC at Memphis. The battle of the backcourts. Josh Giddey and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander going toe-to-toe against Ja Morant and Desmond Bane. I see 3 all-stars on this floor that I just named. One of them, if not 2 of them, probably going to be fighting for an all-star spot. This might be the game where we look back on to see whether or not an all-star spot was determined off of this game. I just think that this is going to be a fun matchup. You seeing 2 young dynamic backcourts and 2 teams that are going to compete at a great level. That should make it a nice action-packed game on a Friday night in Beale Street. If you out there, go check that out.
You already know I love my Beale Street, man. You already know. Love Beale Street. I'm going to be there. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be on Beale Street next month. I will be on Beale Street next month. So best believe, Beale Street, anyone from the Memphis area that's listening to this show, y'all better make sure y'all take me to the right barbecue spots. It's about to get real, baby. I'm coming to your city. I'm coming to your hood.
Oh, for sure. Make sure if you in that Memphis area, you privy to what's going on with War Media, that you check out all of our latest shows. If you're a Bears fan, check out the pre and post game shows hosted by Saul Rodriguez, who's also our producer, been doing a hell of a job. Make sure to check out the At Bat podcast featuring Saul Rodriguez and Miles Porter. Just recently had an episode where you might see a familiar face on there talking about some baseball topics, sharing our thoughts on AL, NL, MVP, recapping the World Series and so forth. Got a lot of hot stove topics that'll be set to take place and news. We'll be on top of that. So much to cover here. Make sure you following us on Open Run as well. You know where to find us on social media. For myself, Gabriel Wilkins, my man Josh Hicks. So long, everybody.